All right. So again, welcome to our session this morning. We're going to have a session today with some newer war tax resistors, folks who've been involved with We the People and the Tax Resistance Collective. And so these are two groups that started after the invasion of Gaza last October. And we'll be having people from each of those groups share how they came to war tax resistance, how they came to form, how their groups came into existence this past winter. And they each had war tax resistance campaigns that they can speak to. And with tax day being done for this year now, some reflections on how that went and thoughts for the future of their campaigns and for war tax resistance. So for each group, we were thinking they would have about, up to or about 20 minutes, which would then leave plenty of time for questions, discussions, comments, etc. So I'll first hand it over to, let me also mention, so both of these groups, maybe in early mid-November, were in contact with the Newtrick office while they were kind of coming to fruition. And so it's been a pleasure to kind of work with these folks and be a resource for them, but also, see the work that they're doing grow. And I know when we were having 101 sessions so often during tax season this year, if it was a kind of a Zoom group where you could ask where people heard about Newtrick or heard about this session, very often, I mean, it was very common for people's answers to be, I heard about this from We the People's Instagram or from being on their Geneva app, or I heard about this from the Tax Resistance Collective. So a lot of folks came to Newtrick through these groups. So we're very thankful for what they've been doing for promoting war tax resistance these past 6 months. So first I'll hand it over to the We the People folks, Nick and June.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you all for joining this session. We're both very excited to talk to you more about what we've been doing and give you some updates on where we're at and just kind of answer any questions you might have. And yeah, so June, I don't know if you want to do a quick
Kick it off.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So hi, everyone. My name is June Johnson. I'm back and forth between DC and New York, and my passion in justice work and social justice work really coming from a family that was oriented around politics in the South, and fighting for things like affirmative action and equality and registering Black people to vote in Atlanta. And from there, obviously rooted in my own systems of justice as a Black woman in America, I started a space on an app called Geneva, which, if you haven't heard of it, it's a really beautiful free version of like Slack and Clubhouse combined. And so the person who started it, it's named Geneva after the Geneva Convention because they noticed that places like Meta, Facebook, Instagram weren't going to be safe. There's such censorship, they're owned by big tech. And so this person started Geneva as a digital safe third space that people can join, connect with. There's lots of big brands on there, but I started this space 2 years ago, actually, because I knew that we were going to need an area to be able to talk, mobilize, organize around what I saw was extensive growing fascism, not only in America, but around the globe. So I started it and then I basically waited and I sat on it because it felt, as I'm sure many of you know, very alienating to be talking about these things on Instagram where people might or might not agree or have the background or feel comfortable because of who follows them. And so it felt very isolated for a long time with this little Geneva house that was empty basically until October 7th happened. And Nick and I started talking. And just my background with Palestinian relations is in Atlanta, a lot of my friends are Palestinian. There's an enclave of Palestinian uh, community in Atlanta. And since 2014, I've been very aware of what was happening. I've been made aware by my friends who are also the same ones on the front lines of the protest when I show up with things that happen with Breonna and Ahmaud Arbery and so forth. So there's been an interconnection of understanding what's been happening in Palestine. And so when everything happened on October 7th, I could see for the first time what felt like a shift in consciousness around this, and people talking about it and looking at it in a different way, and people being willing to examine the US's complicity in this. And so Nick hit me up at that time. We'd been recently introduced in September through my mom, actually. And we just started talking about what is happening, what we feel we could do, what we felt we needed to do, and how to meet the moment and how to help others meet the moment. And so the Geneva home became We the People. Nick had this brilliant idea, which he'll get into in a second, around a tax blackout. He brought me on to learning about Nutric. And so from there, we built this hub. And we've said the whole time that we want this hub to be an informational hub. It's not Nick and I leading it. We really want it to be democratized in that way. And we want to be a center and a source for people to be able to come to, learn, read, engage, organize, mobilize, and then create impactful actions around what we see as the 4 acts of resistance that could really sweep the leg right now and hopefully stop not only this genocide, but all the concurrent genocides in our runaway government. And those 4 acts are war tax resistance, labor resistance, which is a general strike, consumer resistance in the form of BDS, and what am I forgetting? Voting resistance, obviously, which we help support the uncommitted voter that's still going on right now. So that's how it started. That's how we, created it. From there, we created our Instagram. We pointed a lot of attention to Nutric and just, acted and a lot of times as a conduit for people. So BDS for consumer, yes. Divestment sanctions, boycott divestment sanctions, excuse me. So, and also we've recently expanded that. BDS, we're also doing a huge act on Monday in front of the Met called Disrupt the Met. It's our form of BDS, which is boycotting celebrity culture, who's largely stayed silent on a genocide. So we're going to be showing up with as many groups and people as possible on Monday at the Met to disrupt the Met and tell them we won't allow them to be silent anymore. So I'll kick it over to Nick, but that's just the gist of how it got started, how we got connected to Lincoln in this beautiful program, and how we see ourselves helping to support your efforts.
Yeah, so kind of jumping off of that, one thing that June didn't mention that we kind of have in common is our history with education. So I've grown up in a family of educators. Both my parents are teachers. My mom teaches elementary, 4 out of the 5 grades of elementary. My dad teaches high school business and finance. So it's kind of interesting to have conversations with him about taxes and actually learn from him, but also kind of have those kind of pushback conversations and really engaging touch points. And then my brother now teaches the 8th grade science. So I've kind of grown up in this realm of education and recognizing the value of education. So when it comes to We the People and kind of what we're trying to do, as June said, we're more or less a conduit. And I kind of use the catchphrase facilitation of education, where part of the first phase of our tax blackout campaign, as June mentioned, was really trying to shift attention to Nutric. When I had, but following October 7th, first started to look into war tax resistance and seeing all of these comments and posts about taxes funding genocide, taxes funding war, it reminded me of stuff that I had learned in high school in history class. Obviously, specifically the Vietnam War, Joan Baez, the tax resistance movement of that era, and seeing then through the historical progression of it, how that was sort of its biggest peak and then sort of kind of fell off while still maintaining that sense of community. It was not as widely kind of, the awareness of it wasn't as prominent. And so again, the first phase of our campaign was to bring awareness back to that this exists, that there are people who have been doing this for a long time, that communities have formed, that collective care and mutual aid has been established. And so, yeah, we really just wanted to bring the attention back to Nutric and not try to reinvent the wheel, really. So in that regard, again, with all of the other kind of forms of protest that we are advocating for, We just really want to put as much information into the space as possible, encourage people to ask questions, to learn, to have side conversations on their own. Like as June said, this is not a me and June, kind of overseeing it. We really want to encourage people to have breakout rooms, have breakout discussions, meet in person on their own, come back to the space, share what they've learned, organize protests of their own. Like again, June said, we're doing the Met Gala protest, but there are plenty of other things that we could be protesting and showing up for. So yeah, in terms of the tax blackout, going back to this like 3% rule, where if you get 0.5% of the population to sign on to a specific movement and show out for it, that you can really enact change and get the government's attention. So we sort of set a lofty goal at the onset with 50 million Americans, and that was just kind of off of some of my I guess my background is I'm a structural engineer, so I do a lot of building design and trying to my passion is more in low income housing and trying to make the place, make this world a better place for people to live, when we see so much, especially where I am in New York City. Homelessness is on the rise. Government's cracking down on homelessness, criminalizing it, or just taking away people's property. So yeah, this all kind of came into fruition with a quick back of the envelope calc of how many voting age adults are there, given a specific kind of political split, what would be a kind of maybe upper bound of getting people to sign on to this. And also thinking back to the Vietnam era, where I think, and Lincoln, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was about like 500,000 were resisting the upwards of 500,000. That number is kind of flexible, but for the telephone tax, and I think it was about 20,000 or so, like specifically resisting war taxes through the federal government. And so we want to, now that the telephone tax is somewhat obsolete, given our technological era, trying to really push for resisting taxes to the federal government specifically. And yeah, so we want to both encourage people to redirect that money back into local communities, as Newtrick has promoted throughout their existence, and then also kind of instituting this or reestablishing this idea of tithing, and kind of trying to appeal to those people maybe in like the center, maybe even a little bit center right, to try and get as many people on this as possible, where we start to see like religion start to play a big factor in people's decision making and how they go about sometimes war tax resistance. So we are advocating for a 10% tithe to Gaza, with I think it's about 9 vetted organizations that give direct aid. One of them I just know off the top of my head is ANERA, and there's actually an ANERA fundraising event happening this weekend that one of my coworkers, oddly enough, told me about. So that's kind of the gist of it. Encouraging people again to update their W-4s, trying to really flesh out W-4, 1099, especially nowadays with the gig economy. And Lincoln put some great literature out on the website in the last month or so, and trying to pull in as many people into this movement as possible. And as we're seeing a lot now with the student-led protests, like, galvanizing a younger generation of war tax resistors and getting them connected to Newtrick and people who have been doing this for much, if not all of their lives, so that we can learn from all of you. We can, know what's worked, what hasn't worked, getting people again connected back into these mutual aid, collective care networks. And yeah, just hopefully trying to see this spread across the United States. We've had people online, social media in Geneva reach out to us from a variety of other countries. We have people in Canada talking to us, UK talking to us, Australia. How can I do this in my country? How can I do this in my city? So we're also trying to get people connected with War Resisters League and War Resisters International. as a kind of like baseline organization. So
I will say
yeah.
one thing just to add in there. One of the ways that we've been, I think, having a lot of success is having these free virtual town hall meetings about every act of resistance. We try to have them every 2 weeks. Obviously, Nick and I leading it can sometimes get, waylaid with other work. But to that end, when we do have these town halls, sometimes 10 people show up, sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. But it is a great way if anyone here feels like getting activated in that way. I know that Nutric has a like a profile in Geneva. But if anyone does feel like they'd like to, have one of these town halls with us, that would be really generous too. I know that people would really benefit from that because a lot of times it's just asking questions and going over the same stuff that I know you all go over all the time. But it is a lot of hand holding, as I'm sure you all are aware of. And so having these touch points every few weeks where someone can just come back in, ask the questions, be guided, or just learn about it from a different perspective is really helpful too. So we're open to any of the ways that you all might think that we can reach more people with this, especially through Geneva or through our Instagram page. We've been doing collaborative posts. For instance, our immoral imperative started following us. They have like 160,000 followers, I think. Dear White staffers also started following us. They have like 121,000 followers, and so we've been able to do some collaborative posts. I know that Dear White House staffers recently posted in their subscription channel about our protest on Monday. So I think there's a lot of ways in which we can continue to get this out. And one thing I don't think Nick mentioned, but this we've always said from the get-go is just a starting point. We do see this going on. Obviously, it's not just, I know like there's like a tendency for younger generations to think we did it, Joe, and like that's done. But we've been trying to express to everyone these are all ongoing actions because our government is likely not just gonna, roll over with one act. It'll be ongoing, more and more pressure. And so the tax blackout starts at this level, but we ask everyone to increase how much they're redivesting into mutual aid programs and things like that too. So these virtual town halls will continue to go on. These meetings will continue to go on. We see this as a space that will grow and continue, even though we've already passed April 15th.
And to that point, kind of tying all that together, two things. Geneva is an app first and foremost, but personally, I actually really like using the web-based profile. So for those of you that don't like staring at your phones like I do and want to kind of just stay on a computer, like you have your video cameras, like it's really easy to engage in those town halls because usually they're on video. So I would encourage people, if you don't want to download the app, at least like have it, I have it bookmarked in my taskbar on my account. So that's one thing. And then, yeah, just kind of explaining a little bit more about the increase in the tax blackout. This year, we were asking for 5% of people's federal income taxes, taking into account that, we launched this, we soft launched it sort of in December, end of November, and then kind of did our hard launch at the beginning of January, which was also the hard launch for We the People, and kind of these 4 acts of resistance, with a bit of some imagery of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, because it seems like there's a lot of patterns emerging with the way death, famine, destruction, and conflict have been just
Deployed
in our society. Yeah. So for this year, it was 5%. Next year, 2025 will be 10%. 2026 will be, I believe it's 5%, 10%. I believe it's 15%. So we're going up 5% for the first couple years. Minimum, yeah. And then the minimum asking, and then 25% in 2027. And then 50%, which is about, as the Nutric literature has been carefully following, about how much of our taxes, again, it fluctuates, but goes towards funding both war, paying for previous wars, any sort of military expenses. So 2028 will be 50%. We don't necessarily know what it's going to look like past 2028. We're kind of focusing purely on these next 4 years with this next election cycle. And this current election cycle. So, and as June said, that's just the minimum. So we encourage people, if you can contribute more, by all means, that's just the kind of baseline what we're asking for as a, we have to step it up and really show our government that we mean business and that we're serious about what we're doing. So let's see. In terms of, I guess, how it's gone so far, I think we've gotten a pretty decent collective formed and interested. Part of like what we've been doing for the campaign sort of phase 2, if you will, after the initial sort of education outreach. Quickly going back to that, June and Lincoln were talking about kind of building out the Newtrick TikTok a little bit more. And so in addition to seeing a huge influx of people over the last couple months, cascading into the Newtrick Instagram, we have also seen a high number of viewership and follows on the Newtrick TikTok account. I think Lincoln had said some of the videos were upwards in the like hundreds of thousands of views, which is huge and much more than what we see following on Instagram. So tying that into all the legislation coming out for TikTok, and trying to ban that in the country, we've seen that app specifically has been a critical kind of inflection point for not just the Palestinian movement, but also a variety of other movements to mobilize, educate, long form content, short form content. So we're really trying to emphasize this kind of social media outreach through Vortex Resistance. And then, getting into phase 2, what we've been doing once we kind of had established a good group on Geneva is to form a social media task force team. So, and this, anyone can really do that. So it really just comes down to, if you see people posting about war tax resistance, if you see people online in social media saying like, I don't want my taxes to fund genocide, like, shoot them a quick reply, be like, hey, Newtrick exists, We the People exist, Tax Resistant Collective exists. Like these are groups that are forming and have formed and been around for a while that you can use as a resource and sort of direct them there.
We've also been tagging and encouraging our the people in We the People, our members, if you will, to tag celebrities, to tag other groups, to tag press and media, and to try to get as many eyes on this as possible as well.
Yep. Well, we put out a couple press releases. Oh, big point. We were featured. Newtrick and We the People were featured in, I believe, four publications so far: The Nation, Mondoweiss, Protean, and Truth Out. And that I haven't really seen too much if there were like any comments on them or people kind of engaging with those posts on the website. Sometimes they don't allow comments, or it depends on what the subscription is. But we've definitely seen a higher interest in the press and media for war tax resistance. I'm actually trying to, I don't know if Larry Rosenwald is on here, but he and I have been communicating about trying to get a interview slot on Democracy Now! We've been kind of busy with the protests, so I do have to reach back out to him and get him our press release and some other information. But we're trying to not only escalate our movements and our civil disobedience, but also our FaceTime with the public and getting people again more engaged and educated about what's going on. So going back to how it's gone so far, just the simple fact that we've seen so many people engaging with our posts. I sometimes will see posts talking about tax resistance, and I'll see some familiar names like responding to comments in there. So it always warms my heart and excites me to see that people are really just stepping into these more public roles in a way, and having a firm stance in their activism and being public with their activism. So I know on the IRS website, I actually have the tab open right now. There's a like 2024 filing season statistics. So the IRS kind of has like a weekly update of what the taxes or what the current tax standings are. Statistics showing cumulative and comparative totals from the 2024 and 2023 tax return seasons. So if I click on 4/26, so this past week. You know, they have, let's see, total returns processed, total returns received, total number of. So it looks like it's sort of like stable between 2024 and 2023 so far. We're still actually trying to figure out ways that we can quantify and follow how many people are engaging in war tax resistance.
I will say it's hard to quantify, like as we've been trying to do, but and also we can just kind of, like you said, anecdotally check through the content we posted out. And I just posted our most popular tax blackout post. This one we had collaborative help, but it saw over 7,000 likes. The shares are astronomical. Like we can see on the insights. And so we're seeing how many people are not only just liking it, because that's, you know, kind of a passive action, but how many people are specifically bookmarking it and sharing it. Those are the two metrics we're really going for. And so when we look on the back end for that one post that I just posted, it says it was shared 5,239 times and it was bookmarked 4,325 times. And that is a significant upraise in what we saw when we first started posting all of this. So it's hard to track, but and also we can just kind of tell from some of the back end metrics what we think it might be aligned with. Thank you, Corvin.
Let's see. Anything else, maybe June, that I'm missing? I feel like there's one thing that's on the tip of my tongue that I can't quite remember.
I think we've hit it. I know we've hit our time, so I want to be respectful.
Yeah, I know. I've been rushing through and making sure I hit all the touch points. Oh, I guess future of war tax resistance and the future of We the People. You know, again, like this is our first year. I mean, June can talk more about this in her experience, but you know, June said on a number of occasions that she's been kind of unofficially practicing war tax resistance for a couple years. This is going to be my first year doing it and was my first year doing it. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this. Updated my W-4, so being able to have more control about on where my money is going. We're also looking into kind of to supplement this movement. There's a lot of existing groups and organizations that are advocating for, it's not progressive tax. Someone had mentioned it to me the other day and I can't remember it now. But it's more of a local communities pooling tax money and then democratically deciding where that money is allocated within the community, rather than kind of this like trickle down effect where we send it up and then we never see it really come back down. That and also kind of similar to the ranked choice voting, having almost like ranked choice taxes where I had the idea of like, you know, the government can set their own pie chart of taxes where it's distributed, and then kind of set a minimum for people of like how much you would need to give to each of these institutions, you know, military, infrastructure, health and healthcare and services, science and technology, things like that, education. And so allowing people to say, I want this percentage of my money to go education here, here, here. And then again, similar to ranked choice voting, where you have this wide range of demographics and ideas and beliefs in the United States. And we'll see how the taxes kind of just distribute themselves naturally, where you'll have like a certain subset of the population would want to put more towards military, but a certain subset of the population obviously would want to put more towards infrastructure, education, services. So like kind of balancing the scales in that regard. And if the idea is that if people like just want to use whatever the government's pie chart is, they can see that and they, you know, they don't have to fill anything out and they'll just file the taxes as normal, and then that's where it goes. But trying to instill some more autonomy and, you know, just people having more control again over where their money is going. So we're trying to figure out how we can connect with those existing groups and sort of promote that through We the People. So that's kind of like looking ahead. Again, getting more involved with other organizations. We've been in contact with a number of Palestinian-led movements, Watermelon Movement being one of them, and trying to bring this movement, which has a strong foundation in American history, the tax resistance movement, worldwide, which we've seen tax resistance happen throughout history. We have one post up that's like the first mention of it in literature, I believe, was, I'm gonna butcher the name and June can jump in and correct me on it, but it's Lepistophili. Nope. What's the
Are you
Greek?
talking about Lystrata? Oh, so
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the first post, if you scroll up to I'm Collective High, by the way, that's my work name. So sorry for the confusion on my name versus that. But if you go to the links that I posted earlier, We the People Instagram page, the first post on tax resistance, that link shows you how we launched the education around what war tax even was. And so we gave just, cited sources of what it is, who's behind it, what's been going on, and then also the history of it. And the first cited reference of it is a Greek play, Lysistrata, which in more current times has been redone by Spike Lee in a movie called Chirac, which is also the same kind of thing of like based on Iraq and what was going on, because Chicago is known as Chirac because of all the murders. And just getting people to think about how the history of this has proven that this has been done and thought of before. And so we don't have to be so afraid around creating what this might look like now.
Yeah,
So,
maybe this would be a good moment to pause.
Yes, I think we're good.
And we can because some of this I'm sure will come up in the questions and answers, or questions and comments, etc. And so thank you so much, June and Nick, for giving us a taste of all of the stuff that you have been involved with. It has just been so much work that you've been putting in all different forms of resistance, but obviously also with war tax resistance, and we're so thankful for that. So we'll switch gears for a moment because we can always ask more questions of Nick and June later, but I also want to make sure we have plenty of time for the two folks who are joining us from the Tax Resistance Collective. We have Lex who's with us, and also Layla. So I'm trying to, for the recording purposes, find Layla on my screen so I can. Oh, I see. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So we have Lex and Layla from the Tax Resistance Collective, who are also, very active on Instagram and other places, and have been very active this tax season. And I'll hand it over to them.
Hi, I'm Lex. They, them. Layla, do you wanna?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Layla, also they, them.
So we are a very small group. There's 5 of us. And we had already known each other and been doing various like smaller kind of community organizing things together before we kind of came together for this particular project, the tax resistance stuff. We also all have family backgrounds on being on the other end of US imperialism and have very much been interested in this, in tax resistance as an effort to, well, okay, start from the start. Heard about tax strike in October when it was like really just coming up everywhere, and it didn't seem like there were so many people kind of making moves around making it possible. This is before we found out about Nutrig. We're called Tax Resistance Collective for the person in the chat. And so we just decided to put one together, at least like amongst our little community in New York. And we got a lot of help doing research from Nutrix and a lot from Lincoln himself. Attended the 101s, and then we also had people who were more involved in the beginning of the group doing research with people, I think, from like the New England branch, like in Massachusetts. as well as another account. The person is called Yilu, but they're called Tax Clown, and they had put out some material, content, education around how taxes and the military budget and government budgets actually work. And we basically kind of wanted to take the momentum that everybody was feeling around wanting to resist taxes, that fund war, and then kind of flip that, or hopefully flip that around to educating people around how budgets, military actually work, and where tax resistance can become kind of like a more active stance in divesting from the state entirely. Because our group, what we believe is that the real goal at the end of all of this is to take down, is like the abolition of the US itself, because so long as the state exists, so will all these genocides and wars. So pretty much all of our content that we've been putting out has been like tax resistance as like a step towards divesting from the state, from and the empire, because I think that this kind of came together for us in like some of our kind of like private Q&As with Nutrik people as well, where tax resistance itself has like limited kind of touch on like the military budget, in terms of like it's just not like a 1-to-1 ratio of like our money becomes their money. It's the warmongering itself that makes their money. Mining, imperialism pays for itself. Who knew? And then so yeah, our kind of big focus, I guess, has just been taking all of the like materials that we're learning from long-term resistors like Nutrik, and kind of making them kind of more digestible, or like, I don't know what's the word, flashy, like consumable.
Accessible. If I
Yeah,
could even
accessible.
like
Thank you. Yeah, that's the
another
better
thing that
way.
we liked about war tax resistance is just that in the immediate aftermath of October, there was so much energy towards actually doing something. And we wanted to offer tax resistance as a relatively safe first step, like as an entry point for people to resist the empire. We learned a lot from Nutrix educational sessions, and one thing that we gleaned early on was that tax resistance is relatively low risk, and so for the large groups of people who are currently not resisting in any way, we thought that that would be a great entry point.
Thanks, Ayla. Yeah, exactly that. And we kind of were trying to at first we were trying to get like people to pledge, and we had like a whole manifesto and everything about like who we are, what we're trying to do. People who are like kind of joining us in this effort, like what that means. Um and we were hoping to kind of create a sense of like safety in numbers, like okay, like this many people are already doing this, so then you can feel safer and like even lower risk joining in. And then we kind of were receiving a lot of feedback from community, a lot of who seem to also be people of color, probably just because I don't know of who we're sharing in our like personal accounts, because we're all just artists, we're all just like friends that kind of decided to do this together. It's like most of our first time, like I think I was the only one who had done a campaign before, and then like Layla's a graphic designer, so we're just like, all right, we're doing this. um but we were receiving a lot of feedback and questions, and kind of like a general response of nervousness around people who were afraid of not getting their refunds, or people who were afraid of like, what happens if I don't get my refunds, what happens if I don't pay my taxes and I get in trouble and I lose my food stamps, I lose my scholarship, I lose my Medicaid, etc., etc. And this was also inspired by Nutrix kind of like mutual aid like um system already in place, and we have more or less, so we have continued putting out about as much like education as we have gathered ourselves. we hosted a couple of like co-work sessions right when taxes were being filed. Lincoln was present for one of them to just like help people file their taxes while war resistings like actually do the thing. And then we've been focusing a lot of our energy towards, yeah, educating people to like understand this action as like a first kind of everyday, like safe enough divestment practical like step into their lives. And in that, we've been trying to push what we've been calling mutual aid dispatch off of the ground. So that is us trying to gather mutual aid resources to offer them to people so that once they are in this mode of like divesting from the state, war tax resisting, kind of like in this mindset of like, okay, like how do I build a life that is not threatened by the state's whims, punishments, etc., as much as possible at least. Which was, yeah, building this mutual aid resource where we're basically offering dispatch. So we made a resource that is all of the mutual aid programs or organizations or initiatives that we know of across the country, basically anywhere that anybody asks us anything from, to basically be kind of like it's a Notion page, but it's more or less like a search engine sort of is what it works like. So if you're looking for I don't know, like food support in Arkansas, here's somebody that you can like hit up, blah blah blah. And then if something doesn't already exist, we can help either research or put something together. Basically put need and support together, and then also kind of like mediate or like broker communications between people and like orgs if they're wanting that, if they're not, if they're like, I don't know, for whatever reason feeling a way about getting in touch directly. And yeah, I guess we are kind of seeing that as our work, um especially now that the tax season is over. We're gonna keep kind of putting out that education that we've been putting out in different forms, I guess. But yeah, to be honest, a lot of our content creation has been slowed down to answer people's questions. We also have a Telegram channel where it kind of works like a very one-way forum, like a really like toned down forum where people can ask us questions and we just answer for them, or we hit up Lincoln, or we do, like basically help with research so that people can get their questions answered. A lot of like just community discussions around like, okay, I'm a freelancer. Can I just be straight up with my clients about why I want to be paid under the table? And we're just like, well, that's up to your clients, but we encourage it. Let's go. Um, am I leaving anything out, Layla? You want to jump in?
I guess to uh jump in, yeah, like because first of all, there was so much misunderstanding about what we were communicating about tax striking. So many people misunderstood. So many people thought we were saying not to file taxes, even though every single post we put out repeatedly would say like we're not saying that. And yeah, so the mutual aid dispatch came out of a desire to address people's anxieties in the face of potentially not having the apparatus of the state. Like, what are we building towards? If we're building towards the state not existing, then how are the people who are currently getting their needs met through the state? How will those be met? And I see part of our role as the dispatch as like connecting people to mutual aid, connecting people to participating in mutual aid who aren't currently participating, but also like kind of like culling the mutual aid, because what we're finding now is that so many mutual aid projects have been started and abandoned, and so figuring out which ones are still active, and I guess hopefully getting to the point where we can try to push more activity towards them, because there's, for example, like so many community fridges that have shut down because of people not like taking care of them. And I guess the other part of our mutual aid dispatch is creating a network that kind of like the Nutric network exists to support for tax supported tax strikers to support other tax strikers should, you know, the hammer come down. creating a network of people who, like us, believe in mutual aid and like us, like want to support each other, so that if someone has a need that's not met by a mutual aid group that's in our like database, that we can just reach out to our like community that we're building to see that if anyone there can just help. And I think that is it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. June, for your question, in the chat, our own program. I think, to be honest, this is our program, just being the like kind of dispatching. um,
Whatever ways we can help you, like we're happy to brainstorm. I know we started connecting on Signal, but I think like
Yeah.
that's the future is like our own mutual aid program. So whatever way we can make that process like seamless, happy to think about what that would be, however we can buttress you or tap in or whatever.
Thank you. Yeah, that'd be awesome. Honestly, just trying to get people to like use our resource more. So sharing it is huge. We've made a guide how to use it. We're also like we're a little backed up on posts right now, but we're gonna like make another kind of like slide, whatever, for how to use it. Sorry, clearly we're not super enthusiastic about Instagram, but here we are. And
That's why we advocate Geneva, because Instagram's always my personal account's been shadow banned since 2020 and I started speaking about racism. So like I don't trust it. So like happy to figure out ways around sharing that are outside of Instagram and Meta too.
word, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that we actually got suspended for a while. For like a week and a half. That sucked. That was actually like that was kind of the window of time when we were like, let's make this other channel, like the Telegram channel in the Notion, and do this other thing. It's kind of fun that they're scared of us, but I know it's just bots, whatever. I guess yeah, sharing our resource would be really awesome, and yep,
We
that's
also, if you can, if you find or know of mutual aid works that aren't on the list, sometimes we're still like putting them in, like sort of formatting them. But any recommendations for mutual aid for us to add to our database is also super helpful.
yeah, that part. Yeah, like the way that the page works is you can submit either something you're offering, something you need, or a question.
I
Should
think you're muted.
yeah.
Okay.
should we pause there and open it up to questions, or is there a all right? Perfect. So yes, thank you, Lex. Thank you, Layla. This is so wonderful again to hear about all of, I think obviously we invited you here because specifically your work with war tax resistance, but I think obviously with both groups, We the People and the Tax Resistance Collective, we're hearing about how your work is integrating war tax resistance into a larger project and how it's useful as part of this larger project and larger goal. And with your mutual aid project it's just so heartening. And I've seen while all of you have been talking, just smiles and nods and that this has been really a source of joy and hope for the future with especially a lot of the faces that I've seen for many years at our meetings. It's been wonderful. So if you can find the raise your hand function, because there's too many people for me. If you're just kind of waving, I might not see you on my screen, but if you use the raise your hand function, you'll go to the front of the screen. And I will see you and I can call on you. We have about 30 minutes. All right, Patricia.
Hey everyone, I'm in Worcester, Mass, and Thank you guys, We the People and Tax Resistance Collective, so much. We have a group of people here in Worcester who have come together to explore this war tax resistance together this year, and we're a small group, and like alone felt very isolated. Together it has felt so much better. We've been meeting in person as much as possible. It's a very relational group with a range of experience, from people who were resisting through Vietnam, withholding, to some folks who have just been living below the taxable income line for a long time. And to connect on a broader scale here today is really uplifting. So thank you. My questions. So one thing that has come up in our group is some of the veterans of this form of resistance did experience it to be a higher level risk. So when like garnishments or liens on homes became very real, they had to stop. And so I'm wondering how people have been most effective in like moving folks from education into really feeling supported and confident in resisting or redirecting. Another thing that has come up is like, if, I withhold, eventually, they come around, ask for it back. And even if it were repaid, like through a mutual aid network, the money still ends up going back to the government, or back to, funding what we're trying to break down. So I'm wondering if that question or concern has come up for you guys. But then, yeah, also just how you've helped people move from education into really, redirecting or resisting.
So I can speak to kind of like the comfortability. The biggest thing that I'm sure many of you are already aware of is that the kind of greatest barrier to even coming on to war tax resistance is fear, and fear of the IRS specifically. And Newtrick has plenty of resources out, and we've seen a number of other accounts post and their research into the IRS and how much they've been defunded, specifically by Republicans over the years, and how their computers are like early 2000s level, so they're not even like modernized to the degree that we're all some of us are on laptops and have really high tech, and they're kind of going off of AOL dial-up, if so to speak. So that's kind of like the biggest thing is getting people to understand that the resources at the disposal of the IRS are severely limited, and have been continuing to decline over the years. And this also sort of ties into what we're seeing with Democrats and Republicans, where Democrats are trying to fund the IRS, and we're like, no, we don't want to do that. We actually really would rather take a Republican-led stance on the IRS. And so, yeah, so getting people to understand that the liabilities associated with tax resistance are not to the degree that they either used to be and are continuing to decline. So that's number one. When it comes to things like liens on homes or kind of property seizures, this generation is becoming very very aware of the fact that we will probably never own property. It has gotten to the point where most of us are renters. We don't really own much, and the only thing that the IRS can really do is garnish wages, and that's kind of where the mutual aid programs come in, because if we are not able to afford rent, I was actually just talking to Tax Resistance Collective the other day, and they were saying how they are getting in requests like, I need X amount of money for rent and this and this. So that's kind of and again, kind of tying into what I try to do in my job for low-income housing, and trying to make sure that people are housed as a human right and to have shelter. So they're all kind of like tied and integrated together. But that's kind of the other sort of alleviating sensation, but also, you know, it's a bittersweet. Again, we're not going to be able to own property most likely, but in that sense, we are kind of shielded from any sort of property seizures other than wage garnishment. So, and then again, that's where mutual aid kind of comes into play to fill in the gaps.
For our part, we put out a post about our take on risk. I put that in the chat. We basically encourage for everybody to assess what their own comfort level with risk is before making any decisions. And because our effort is about kind of encouraging people to think about like the life that they want to lead, and kind of orienting their lifestyle towards resisting empire. A legal way to resist taxes is just to not make that much money legally, and so to also offer that as an option.
Thank you so much. I'll see that Larry, loquacious Larry, has his hand up. So remember, we have a bunch of other folks now that are raising their hands. So please keep your questions concise. So I'll hand it over to Larry. Larry, if you're talking, you're muted. Larry will come back to you. I'll go to Rick.
Thanks. Thanks. This is all so great to hear. Nick, I had a question for you. You had mentioned that sounded like your group has vented the some Palestinian groups that would be good to direct to. Are they listed on your site?
Yes, if you go to June, I didn't look at it at exactly which tax post.
Actually, yeah, if you go to our Instagram, which I'll drop the link down again, on our Instagram link in our bio, we have our press release that we've done, and we list out all of the organizations there, but I'll also directly link the post in which we have it, and we have it tagged on Instagram too. So I'll put those 2 links right now.
Great. Thank you.
I'll actually clip that in here as well, because we just have a kind of graphic, so it's people don't want to go online, they can just look at the photo here. I'll post it in the chat.
Thanks. Larry, are you
okay? I think I'm here.
Okay.
I'm ready. I'm ready to try not to be loquacious. I love hearing these new faces and these new thoughts. I think that some of the views that they have, especially, you know, the distinction between being a liberal and being a radical is something we don't talk about very much. But, you know, a lot of us oldsters are more liberal than radical. And I think that the new voices I'm hearing, you know, talk more about, you know, the empire. We used to talk about capitalism. I guess they're the same thing, but you know, they're the bad guys and we're the good guys. And I think that what I'm hearing from these younger faces is a lot about education, a lot about how they see life, which is, you know, they're not going to own property maybe, so they don't have to worry about somebody taking it away. And we have always known that younger people were the people who were getting into war tax resistance because they had less to lose. And as they grew older and had more accumulated, let's call it wealth, all of a sudden the IRS became scary. And so the people I'm hearing are talking about the fact that, you know, they kind of start out in a scary place. And I think that the issue about getting over the hump to do something, and once people are educated, we found at the CMTC that we were trying to get people to sign a pledge that they would resist when 100,000 people agreed and we'd all do it together. Well, we never got to 100,000, of course. We got to 10,000. And but what I found is one of the people involved in that is that once people signed the pledge to do it sometime, they were willing in many cases to do it sooner rather than later. And it was an entry point. It was an escape from the way, think of, I can't do anything about this. And we would always try to tell people, you know, you could begin with phone tax, and a lot of people did. And of course, that's not available really anymore. But people can resist a little bit or a lot, and they do have some choice about that, as long as they don't think that getting a refund is the goal. Because getting a refund is such a trick on people's mind, and we need to educate people about that. And I think that the people who I'm hearing here in these groups are thinking revolutionary thoughts. And those of us who have been in Nutrik for 40 years need to hear those revolutionary thoughts. And you need to join us and be part of the consensus and move us a little bit, if I can use the the phrase, move us a little to the left. And I'm glad to see you there already. And I'll shut up, which some people always hope I will do someday.
Thank you, Larry.
One thing I just wanted to add to that real quick is that, so I'm a millennial and I'm the first generation that's expected to not outlive the parents as far as life expectancy. Gen Z also follows in that. And so we're seeing more consistently that that is a trend that's rising. And so Larry, in addition to what you said about, you know, we are forged in a scary place, we're also seeing that our life expectancy is being actively cut down in very dramatic ways, more so than smoking cigarettes. And so I think you have this compounding issue of, are we going to live to see our old age? Probably not, with climate crisis compounding that too. And so it does create this system, kind of speaking to what you were talking to, Patricia, and you were speaking to, Larry, of we feel like we have nothing to lose. I have friends who aren't having children because of this. As a Black woman, I know women who are going out of the country to safely have kids because it's a likelihood that they'll die here carrying a child. So there's all these issues that we just kind of feel like a rat in a corner, for, you know, a gross analogy of it, of we're so trapped and caged that we have to fight back. And so what does it mean if we don't buy a house, if we're never even expected to, and things like that. So I do think that that is putting us in a very specific issue, and one that has to be addressed, and not what am I trying to say? It has to be addressed in a way that makes everyone feel seen, but also understood that there are probably differing issues that we're all coming to this from.
All right, Amira.
Thank you so much, Lincoln, and thank you so much for all the speakers who are with us today. My name is Amira. I speak from Sacramento. I'm part of a group, an organizing group around Palestine and Gaza. The name of this group is Sacramento Stands with Palestine, and it's one of several initiatives by the Answer Coalition, which is Act Now to Stop War and End Racism. It's been active since September 11th. So, you know, one of the working groups of Sacramento Stand, and I've been, you know, also, you know, one of the people who learned a lot from Nutrik about war tax resistance. I'm very grateful. I started doing this for as soon as 2023, so I'm new in this, and I'm very I'm always very oriented or interested in all forms of legal war tax resistance. I personally okay, I'm not gonna go into a lot of details. Maybe head to the question directly. So what I was going to say is our group works on BDS initiatives. And so we have been, you know, developing a small group that would work on war tax resistance on the long term. But as you may all know, now the most urgent thing is, you know, the encampments and divest, which is also part of the BDS. So now we're thinking, is there any way that the two directions, I don't know, meet, or the two like the encampments and the war tax resistance meet through either, I don't know if anyone is in Sacramento or close to Sacramento would be able to come and present in the encampment, or maybe in in other areas in if anyone is in the Bay Area and would like to present in one of these encampments. And if an in-person presence is not possible, would it be possible to have like kind of like a Zoom meeting as well, but it's projected and then people are able to interact and listen to a presentation and all that, because it's a lot of time they're spending their time there, and it's I believe it's a great opportunity for outreach, especially if this happens on with several encampments. I mean, I personally can speak of Sacramento, but this is a nationwide movement, and so we're all doing BDS, right? It's whether war tax resistance or encampment, or they're trying to divest this money away from. So yeah, just this was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Amir. That's a great point, and that's something that I personally have been thinking a lot about as well. I graduated from Northeastern University, and there's currently an encampment in a very prominent pro-Palestinian coalition through Northeastern as well, the SJP group there. And I think given that, again, what we've talked about with tax resistance or tax resistance being nowadays more of a kind of low risk for this generation when it comes again to property and things like that, where college students a lot of the times are working or have jobs through the university, and so they're getting their kind of first taste, some of them even prior and working as students in high school, getting their kind of first taste of the tax system and having to pay taxes. And so for them, where they're still living on campus, they are still sometimes supplemented by their parents' income and not exactly truly independent yet. That's a great way of getting that younger generation started up with tax resistance and getting them to practice that. So in addition to BDS, I agree. I think talking to college students and trying to have a presence on some of these encampments or scheduling Zoom calls like you said is a great way to add to that education that they're already receiving, and to give them another way to resist. So that's definitely something that we are going to note and look into. I personally have to reach out to a number of Northeastern groups to try and come back on campus and talk to them. That's great that you mentioned that, because it's something that that we've already been starting to think about.
All right. Yes, thank you, Amira, for bringing that up. I feel like that'll be a continuing discussion point. Peter.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that Nutrik has its own mutual aid group called the War Tax Resistance Penalty Fund, probably as old as Nutrik itself. And we, there's WTRPF.org, or you can get to it to the Nutrik site. We only reimburse people for their penalties and interest, which is something, when the IRS seizes money, they don't just take the money that you refuse to pay, they also add on penalties and interests. And so what we can reimburse you for those penalties and interests. So get in touch with us if you have a situation where you've been you have money seized, and we can try to help.
Thank you, Peter. Other questions or comments? I think we're going to make sure we end at the half-hour mark, because we only have a half-hour break between sessions. But if there's other questions or comments, now would be the time.
June, do you want to highlight our kind of our DNC work in Chicago?
Oh, yeah. I'll keep it super brief. So part of the ongoing efforts that we're doing, like I said, are these 4 acts of resistance that we feel could be the most nonviolent but civil disobedient. And so in continuing with voting resistance, which we're asking people to vote either blank ballot where they are or uncommitted, and we've put out literature and information about how to effectively do that state by state. What we are planning on doing is meeting in Chicago for the DNC convention. It's ironic to me that it's going to be in Chicago. So much of what we're seeing on the encampments, Columbia and so forth are echoing 1968. And I've been trying to get everyone in We the People to watch Chicago 7 on Netflix. We're going to have a movie night in Geneva for anyone who's interested, just because I think it's really important to understand the history of what we're approaching and how it could possibly turn out. But we are holding a day of action in Chicago on August 21st, where we hope to have speakers and, you know, hold space for protest about what's likely to take place at the DNC. I don't know if anyone was at the DNC when everything happened with Bernie, but it became, pardon my French, a real shit show. And so I think we're going to need lots of witnesses. I think we're going to need lots of people on the ground to be there and witness that again. But that being said, what we're also coordinating during that time is asking everyone to do a global strike, if possible, that week of August 19th through the 23rd. We think this will give us plenty of time to organize and get as many people around the globe. We might need to bring it up sooner and have it before then. I'm not quite sure, just given how everything's going, but that's the thought process behind it. But we'll definitely be in Chicago on August 21st, holding meetings, speeches, protest. If anyone can join, we're happy to connect on that and give you more information.
Thanks, June. So I see, Amira, you have your hand up, but then after that, maybe I'll give an opportunity for a last word from our 4 speakers today.
Yeah, very brief question. How do we get in touch with the We the People? Because thank you.
I'm going to drop the invite to Geneva in the chat and then also our email. So feel free to email or reach out to us, however, whatever is most accessible.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, so I'll leave it. So with that, the questions, comments, or things that may have popped up in your mind when you heard others speaking, I'll leave the last word for each of our speakers today.
I'll start it. I just really appreciate the space and thank you so much for Newtrick for organizing this. I have felt so scared for so long about what I was doing around taxes, not if it was right, because I knew morally it was, but just how to go about doing it so that I didn't land myself in more hot water than I needed to. And finding this has been a lifeline. And so I really appreciate just the community, the intention, everyone here giving their Saturday. And it's my hope that We the People continues and we are able to connect and keep this community strong and branch out and, you know, get more people resisting by any means necessary. So thank you for just allowing us to speak. My name is June again. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. I dropped the email there. It's wtp.resist@gmail.com. That reaches both Nick and I, but you can also find us on Instagram, wtp.resist as well. And so I just really thank you all for holding the space and feel free to come with any questions and reach out to us whenever you might need to.
Layla?
Sure. Also, thank you so much to Newtrick. You were so instrumental in helping us get our idea off the ground and supporting us with educational sessions and also with our tax co-filing events. So thank you so much for all of that. Thank you for Nick and June. It's been great to hear everything that you guys are doing. Thank you for everyone who is here. And yeah, please connect with us. Our Instagram is in the chat, our Telegram is in the chat, and I'll throw the email in the chat too for anyone who's more comfortable with that method of communication.
And please shout out our visual aid resource, share it around, let people know about it.
Yeah, to that point, if I could just end with one comment, is continue to talk about this. Like, it's we're at the point where the conversation is already happening kind of outside of these spaces, and the more people that we can bring in, the more people that we connect with. I've been trying to like talk to my, in a very corporate setting, trying to talk to a lot of my coworkers about what tax resistance is, some of the protests that we're doing, and just really trying to, you know, keep that momentum going. And the more we talk about it, the more that people will, start to allow themselves to engage. And so, yeah, for those of you who have been resisting for as long as you have, I just want to say a very special thank you to all of you for your activism, for your continued dedication and support to liberation and true freedom in this world, and what it means to be a part of a community and part of a collective. So thank you for setting the example. Thank you for continuing to forge on and to be that guiding light for the new generation, because as someone again who has grown up around teachers and has a strong love for teachers and education, you are the people who we look to. You are the people who give us the strength to know that we can do this for a long time. And the wisdom that you've gained over the years is what is critical to not only maintaining this momentum and maintaining this movement, but also helping to, as I said before, kind of revitalize this into the quote unquote like modern era, where we're seeing so many more younger people getting involved in this work. So thank you again for everything that you've done and continue to do.
All right. A huge thank you and a round of applause for our speakers, Lex, Layla, June, and Nick. Thank you so much.